Fitness influencer couples look picture perfect online, but behind the filtered posts lie stories that never made it to their feeds. In this video, we're uncovering 6 of the most shocking fitness influencer couple deaths ever documented. It was January 19th, 2017. The morning air at Lake Tahoe's northeastern shore registered 22 degrees Fahrenheit as Caleb and Maya Sturphausen prepared their backyard contrast therapy setup. Caleb and Maya were a married couple in their early 30s who'd built a modest social media following, documenting their CrossFit journey and biohacking experiments. Caleb worked as an insurance adjuster, while Maya managed a local organic grocery store. Their YouTube channel had roughly 3,000 subscribers who followed their workout routines, supplement reviews, and recovery protocols. They'd recently become obsessed with contrast therapy after watching influencers tout its benefits. Contrast therapy involves exposing the body to alternating temperature extremes, typically cold water followed by heat. The drastic temperature shifts cause rapid blood vessel constriction and dilation. Medical professionals recommend gradual transitions and moderate temperature differences. Caleb and Maya had spent weeks doing ice baths, followed by hot showers, but explained in an update video that they wanted something more extreme for their channel. They'd purchased a wood-fired soaking tub and positioned it on their lakefront property, planning to cut a hole in the frozen lake ice for maximum contrast. That morning, they'd ignored basic safety guidelines entirely. The wood-fired tub had been heating since dawn, reaching temperatures around 118 degrees Fahrenheit, far beyond the recommended maximum of 104 degrees. They'd used a chainsaw to cut a 4x4-foot hole in the lake ice, exposing water that measured 34 degrees Fahrenheit. Caleb had positioned 3 cameras, one mounted on a tripod facing the lake, one on the tub deck, and Maya's phone propped against a tree. In a recorded footage, they said that they planned to immerse in the freezing lake for 3 minutes, then sprint directly into the dangerously overheated tub. At approximately 8:15 in the morning, both entered the lake hole simultaneously. The shock was immediate and visible on camera. Their breathing became rapid and panicked as the frigid water triggered an involuntary gasp reflex and uncontrolled hyperventilation. After exactly 3 minutes, they scrambled out with visibly impaired coordination and ran the 15 feet to the wooden tub, climbing in together. Within seconds, both clutched their chests. The extreme temperature swing from 34 degrees to nearly 120 degrees placed sudden stress on their cardiovascular systems. Caleb grabbed at his upper back while Maya pressed both hands to her sternum. The tripod camera captured both of them, convulsing briefly, before slumping face down into the steaming water simultaneously. The image partially blurred as condensation formed on the lens. Neither surfaced or moved again. A neighbor walking his dog noticed steam rising unusually high from the Sturphausen property and heard the cameras still running, but no voices. He approached the fence line around 8:35 in the morning and saw 2 bodies floating motionless in the tub. He called 911 immediately. Paramedics arrived within 9 minutes, but both victims showed no vital signs. The autopsy revealed both had suffered sudden fatal cardiac arrhythmias, most consistent with ventricular fibrillation. Neither Caleb nor Maya had any documented history of cardiac disease, structural heart abnormalities, or prior arrhythmic episodes. Toxicology reports were negative for alcohol, caffeine, stimulants, or other substances that could have contributed to the event. Pulmonary edema and water in the airways indicated rapid loss of consciousness and aspiration, and the manner of death was ruled accidental. Both were likely unconscious within 30 seconds and dead within 3 minutes. After family consent and redaction, the The footage was later provided to regional fire departments and emergency medical services for training purposes. The Sturphausen family quietly sold the lakefront property 6 months later, and their social media accounts were deleted. It was July 8, 2018, the sandstone expanse near Canyonlands National Park. Evan Mudry and Ria Beth Lopez, minimalist lifestyle influencers from Portland, had driven 12 hours to this remote Utah location for a challenge that would turn fatal. Evan and Ria had built a modest following, documenting their extreme minimalism experiments, 30-day water fasts, sleeping outdoors in winter, living on $1 per day. Their social media platforms attracted roughly 3,500 followers who admired their discipline and ascetic philosophy. Their content focused on proving that modern humans had grown soft, that discomfort was the path to enlightenment. The challenge they had designed was deliberately brutal. 7 days alone in the Utah desert with 1 gallon of water per person per day, minimal food, and complete silence. The twist that made it monetizable was a penalty system. Speaking a single word would cost them $100 from their savings account, documented via a chest-mounted action. The news had issued excessive heat warnings for the region, with temperatures forecast to reach 106 to 108 degrees Fahrenheit. Evan dismissed these warnings in his final Instagram post, making light of the issue. They hiked into the backcountry at dawn with minimal gear. Evan further limited their already sparse water, believing mild dehydration would enhance clarity, and Ria followed without question. By day 3, both showed severe dehydration, yet the footage shows them communicating only with gestures, keeping silent despite obvious distress. On day 4, approximately 3:15 in the afternoon, Evan attempted to descend a steep sandstone ledge they had climbed earlier. Dehydration had affected his coordination and judgment. His foot slipped on loose rock, and he fell 9 feet onto a boulder outcropping below. The body camera, intermittently recording due to heat-related shutdowns, captured the crack of impact and Evan's leg bending at an unnatural angle, a compound fracture of the upper thigh consistent with a femur break, with bone protruding through skin. He let out an involuntary scream before biting down on his shirt, attempting to suppress any further sound, writhing silently while blood pooled on the hot rock. Ria reached him within minutes. The footage shows her examining the wound, hands shaking, mouth opening as if to speak, then closing again. She fashioned a splint from their tent poles and began dragging Evan by his arms toward their vehicle. Still 7 miles distant, the temperature peaked at 106 degrees Fahrenheit. Over the next 48 hours, she made less than 2 miles, stopping frequently to rest in whatever shade she could find. The camera shows her collapsing on day 6, convulsing briefly, then lying still. Evan, immobilized and suffering massive blood loss from what was suspected to be a femoral artery injury, survived approximately another 36 hours before succumbing. A missing persons report filed by Ria's sister on day 9 prompted a search. Park rangers located their vehicle on day 11 and found both bodies the following afternoon. The body camera's memory card was recovered intact, containing segmented files with significant gaps, with roughly half of the footage usable and the remainder corrupted by heat and dust exposure. The medical examiner determined Ria died from hyperthermia and multiple organ failure caused by extreme dehydration and physical exertion. The county coroner noted that speaking immediately after the accident would likely have saved both lives, as they were within intermittent cell signal range near the ridgeline and access trail for the first 18 hours after Evan's fall. Funerals were small and private, with Evan's in Oregon and Ria's in Texas, attended only by family and a few close friends, with no mention of their online lives. The recovered body camera footage was returned to Evan's parents and immediately destroyed, and all their social media accounts were deleted. Within weeks, all traces of the challenge disappeared from the internet, leaving only official case records. It was April 2nd, 2014. The afternoon heat in Miami, Florida hung thick over a modest apartment complex in Kendall, where Jonah Pell and Sloan Merritt prepared to film what they believed would be their most groundbreaking content yet. Jonah and Sloan weren't scientists or nutritionists. They were self-taught paleo lifestyle advocates who had built a modest following of 2,000 subscribers on their joint channel promoting ancestral eating practices. Together, they pushed increasingly extreme interpretations of paleo eating, convinced that mimicking prehistoric diets would unlock superior health. Their content evolved from cooking grass-fed beef to consuming raw organ meats, always seeking the next shocking nutritional experiment. The couple had spent 3 months sourcing what they called the ultimate ancestral superfood, preserved polar bear liver. They'd connected through online forums with an illegal exotic meat supplier, paying $800 for a vacuum-sealed portion shipped from an undisclosed location. Polar bear liver has dangerously high vitamin A, with just an ounce enough to cause hypervitaminosis A, a fact known since early 20th century Arctic explorers died from eating it. Despite warnings from multiple online sources and nutrition databases, Jonah and Sloan dismissed them as fear-mongering meant to suppress ancestral wisdom. That afternoon, they filmed themselves eating about 4 ounces of the dark, oily liver each, noting a metallic, fishy taste. Both experienced immediate nausea and worsening headaches, but blamed it on flavor, not toxicity. They ended the video urging viewers to try apex predator organs, citing ancestral diets. By 9:30 that evening, both were experiencing severe headaches and persistent vomiting. Sloan's vision likely began blurring, and her skin would have felt tender to touch. The symptoms worsened steadily through the night, but friends they were chatting with through the ordeal said that they convinced themselves this was detoxification, a concept popular in alternative health communities, and went to bed expecting to feel better by morning. The next day brought escalating horror. Both developed intense photosensitivity that forced them to keep the apartment dark. The headaches intensified to the point neither could stand without vomiting. By afternoon, Jonah's coordination deteriorated noticeably, and Sloan became increasingly confused, asking repetitive questions and forgetting conversations within minutes. On April 4th, at 6:15 in the morning, Jonah collapsed in the bathroom. Sloan, now severely jaundiced with yellowed eyes and skin, managed to call emergency services and explained everything. Paramedics arrived within 8 minutes, finding both victims in critical condition with visible neurological impairment and uncontrolled vomiting. They provided oxygen support, established intravenous access, and transported both patients emergently, notifying the receiving hospital of a suspected toxic ingestion. They were transported to a regional medical center where both died within hours. Jonah at 11:40 in the morning and Sloan at 2:15 in the afternoon, despite aggressive supportive care in intensive care units. Autopsy reports confirmed acute hypervitaminosis A. Findings included severe acute liver failure with marked hepatic tissue damage and profound cerebral edema, with fluid accumulating inside their skulls, creating fatal intracranial pressure that caused irreversible brain injury. Sloan's brother accessed their apartment and deleted the channel within 36 hours of their deaths. State public health inspectors and wildlife enforcement officers seized remaining supplements and exotic meat products for testing, and federal wildlife authorities opened an investigation into the illegal supplier. It was November 11th, 2016. A small apartment in Seattle's Capitol Hill neighborhood hummed with the glow of multiple cameras and ring lights, all pointed at a custom-built treadmill desk setup. Marco and Tara Hensley were in their 30s, minor figures in the remote fitness coaching world, running an online wellness brand focused on productivity hacks for desk workers. By promoting walking desks, standing workstations, and biohacking techniques, they had built a modest following on Twitch. Their content emphasized extremes: 48-hour fasts, cold plunges, dopamine detox challenges. The 96-hour walk and work challenge aimed to test endurance while promoting their products. A treadmill desk allows low but constant speed movement while working, safe for moderate daily use. Continuous use without sleep, however, causes muscle breakdown, dehydration, cognitive decline, and organ failure. They had planned the stream meticulously, setting up bathroom breaks on camera, prepared meals, and a rotation of micro-rest periods where they would stand still on the moving belt for 15-minute intervals. They relied on energy drinks and stimulant supplements to stay awake, and multiple viewers had commented warnings about rhabdomyolysis and sleep deprivation psychosis by hour 60. A registered nurse watching the stream filed a wellness check request with Seattle police on November 10th, but officers arrived, spoke briefly with the couple through the door, documented concern, and left after confirming they were adults acting voluntarily. By hour 88, Tara's urine had turned dark brown, visible when she used a clear container on camera per their transparency protocol. She began slurring words and seemed disoriented, asking Marco repeatedly what day it was. Marco was experiencing visual hallucinations, swatting at objects that weren't there, and talking to his deceased father. Neither acknowledged the other's deterioration, both locked into a state of delusional determination. At hour 91, Marco's gait became unstable, his legs no longer coordinating properly, as severe sleep deprivation and stimulant overload scrambled his motor control. At 3:47 in the afternoon on November 11th, Marco stumbled forward on the treadmill, his feet tangled, and he pitched face first toward the fixed wooden desk edge. His forehead struck the desk with audible force, and his body twisted as he fell, neck bending at an unnatural angle under axial compression, before he collapsed onto the belt, which dragged him backward off the platform. Tara screamed and tried to help him, but her legs gave out, and she fell beside him, unable to stand. The live stream continued broadcasting, both of them motionless on the floor, until the stream automatically paused during a brief encoder reset. Multiple viewers called 911. Fire department paramedics arrived 11 minutes later, breaking through the apartment door. Marco had no pulse and showed obvious neck trauma with neurological devastation. Tara was semi-conscious, severely dehydrated, hypotensive, and unresponsive to questions. Marco was pronounced dead at the scene. Tara was rushed to a nearby medical center in extremis, where she died the following day from acute kidney failure caused by rhabdomyolysis, a condition where broken-down muscle tissue releases proteins that poison the kidneys. The medical examiner determined Marco died from a C2 vertebral fracture, causing immediate spinal cord severance and traumatic brain injury from the desk impact. Tara's autopsy revealed her muscles had been breaking down for at least 48 hours before collapse, releasing fatal levels of myoglobin into her bloodstream. With severe dehydration and prolonged exertion listed as contributing factors, and noted elevated creatine kinase levels consistent with extreme, sustained muscular exertion. The entire 91-hour stream remained archived on the platform until the family requested removal 3 weeks later. Funerals were small and private, held in Seattle with only close family and a few friends attending. It was May 27th, 2018. The Everglades stretched under a hazy Florida sun, humid air thick with the smell of algae and decay. Lucas Bren, a 28-year-old fitness influencer, and his wife Naomi, 25, waded knee-deep into the marsh with a waterproof phone mount and backpack. The Brens had built a modest following, promoting what they called primal protein nutrition, a diet emphasizing wild-caught foods and ancestral eating patterns. Lucas worked part-time as a personal trainer, while Naomi managed their online merchandise store, selling protein supplements and workout guides. Their Instagram featured photos of them spearfishing, foraging wild plants, and consuming unconventional foods like rattlesnake and turtle. That afternoon, the couple had driven to a remote access point with a specific goal, filming themselves harvesting alligator eggs for what Lucas described in earlier posts as the ultimate primal protein challenge. The Everglades ecosystem is a vast wetland where alligators nest during late spring, laying eggs in mounds of vegetation near water. Female American alligators remain close to their nests for the entire 63 to 68-day incubation period, often within a few feet, and will defend them aggressively against any perceived threat with short explosive bursts of speed. Wildlife conservation regulations strictly prohibit disturbing or taking alligator eggs without permits, and warnings throughout the park cautioned visitors to maintain distance from all wildlife, including posted notices about nesting season and guarded nests. The Brens had received criticism before for their increasingly dangerous content, but engagement metrics kept climbing with each risky stunt. Naomi activated the phone camera on her chest as they waded into the murky water, documenting their approach. Lucas spotted a nest mound approximately 40 yards from the access trail, situated beside a shallow marl slough with intermittent exposed limestone shelves beneath the water. The couple discussed briefly whether to proceed, aware that alligators could be nearby, but dismissing the danger as exaggerated. The marsh bottom was soft marl mixed with sharp limestone edges beneath 2 feet of brown water. Neither wore protective gear beyond sneakers and shorts. Lucas reached the nest mound and began pulling apart vegetation, while Naomi filmed from 5 feet away. The phone captured everything that followed. A 10-foot female alligator defending the nest exploded from submerged vegetation 15 feet to their right, closing the distance in under 3 seconds. Naomi screamed and turned to run, but the alligator's jaws clamped onto her left leg, dragging her under immediately, forcing her face below the waterline. Lucas lunged toward his wife, but the alligator surfaced and struck again, biting his right arm and thigh simultaneously. The attack lasted approximately 20 seconds of thrashing visible in the recovered footage before Lucas collapsed backward, his skull striking a submerged limestone shelf with audible impact. The phone remained mounted on Naomi's chest, still recording underwater as she drowned, the image rapidly degrading as silt and vegetation clouded the lens. 2 kayakers 200 yards away heard the screaming and called emergency services. Wildlife officers arrived 35 minutes later, after staging from a public launch and traveling by airboat, recovering both bodies by 5:40 in the afternoon after securing the aggressive female alligator, which was euthanized in accordance with standard procedure. The medical examiner determined Naomi died from drowning, combined with severe tissue damage from multiple bite wounds to her leg and torso. Lucas died from blood loss and blunt force head trauma, causing massive brain hemorrhaging, with examiners also documenting patterned bite injuries and the absence of post-mortem scavenging. The recovered phone footage was heavily degraded and never released publicly, with only still frames retained by authorities for the report. The couple's social media channels were quietly deactivated by the family within days, leaving no active accounts or content online. Their stunt and deaths remained largely unnoticed outside official records and local news. It was August 3rd, 2013. The humid Georgia air hung heavy over a small property outside Savannah, where Elliot Crane, 41, and his wife Mara, 38, maintained 6 beehives behind their converted garage studio. The Cranes ran a moderately successful blog focused on natural anti-inflammatory treatments, attracting roughly 4,000 followers interested in alternative wellness. Elliot had worked as a pharmaceutical sales representative before leaving the industry. Mara, a former yoga instructor with persistent joint issues, became convinced that bee venom therapy could reduce inflammation naturally. A small health supplement company provided them with free products in exchange for promotional posts. Bee venom therapy involves controlled stings from live honeybees, based on the theory that venom compounds trigger anti-inflammatory responses in the body. Practitioners typically start with 1 or 2 stings and monitor for allergic reactions, as repeated exposure can sensitize the immune system and trigger severe anaphylaxis even in people who previously tolerated stings without issue, a risk well documented in allergy literature. The Cranes had been performing daily sting sessions for 8 months, gradually increasing from 2 stings to over a dozen each per session. Neighbors later reported seeing both with visible facial swelling on multiple occasions. Mara had experienced throat tightness twice in the previous month, and Elliot developed hives after a session 3 weeks earlier. Despite these warning signs indicating progressive sensitization, a process where the immune response becomes increasingly severe with repeated exposure, they attributed the symptoms to detoxification and continued escalating their exposure. That afternoon, they planned to film their most intensive session yet for an upcoming blog post promoting bee venom as a pharmaceutical alternative. Their garage had a basic security camera installed to monitor the hives, positioned to capture the hive area, but not the interior of the house. Both had declined to keep epinephrine auto-injectors on site, despite a local beekeeper's recommendation, dismissing such precautions as unnecessary fear-mongering. The temperature was 91 degrees, with 78% humidity, conditions that make bees more defensive, especially when hives are disturbed. At 4:20 in the afternoon, Elliot attempted to remove a frame from their largest hive, while Mara stood nearby, preparing to receive stings. The frame slipped from his hands and fell, striking the hive box and toppling it completely. Hundreds of bees erupted in defensive swarm behavior, a coordinated response triggered by alarm pheromones, attacking both immediately. The security footage captured the next 8 minutes, though portions were partially obscured by the density of the swarm and rapid movement. Both began swatting frantically and stumbled toward the garage door. Within 2 minutes, visible swelling distorted their faces and necks. Mara collapsed first at the doorway, clutching her throat as her airways constricted. Elliot made it 3 steps further before dropping to his knees. Elliot received an estimated 40 stings within the first minute. Mara, at least 35. Numbers later confirmed during post-mortem examination. Neither could reach the phone inside, which had been left charging on a workbench. At 4:31 in the afternoon, a neighbor working in his yard heard unusual commotion and saw the massive bee swarm. He called emergency services immediately. Paramedics arrived at 4:47 in the afternoon, finding both unconscious and not breathing. Despite aggressive treatment, including epinephrine and advanced airway attempts, made difficult by severe facial and throat swelling, neither responded. The medical examiner determined both died from anaphylactic shock, causing complete airway closure and catastrophic blood pressure collapse. The autopsy showed severe swelling in the throat, fluid in the lungs, and high levels of a blood chemical that indicate death from a severe allergic reaction. The security footage was reviewed by county health investigators examining the incident, with digital copies preserved under evidence chain protocols. The apiary was dismantled by a licensed removal service within 72 hours following inspection by local agricultural and public health officials. Thanks for watching. If you like these stories, click here.